Okay.
Oh,
Wait, is that a penguin?
He's a bear.
Panda.
yeah, nice.
Oh, a panda.
Oh, nice.
Did you kind of forget that you were in that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Want to start with good morning?
Good morning.
Good
Morning.
morning, Eric.
Morning.
Today we're gonna start with you're gonna put your knees in.
Can't hear you quite.
In and knees out. Well, and that's a really good segue because we're going to do a bunch of rotational hip work today. So he is just right on track with going right where we're headed. Knees in, knees out. How many of those do you want? 5. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Awesome. Okay, what are you going to do?
Bye.
What are you going to eat right now?
Pancakes.
Dad's making pancakes.
Your hand.
Bye.
Hi.
Bye.
All right.
Very cute.
I'll see you after class. Okay. Good morning. Start with your feet on the floor, feet pointed straight ahead. Take a moment to just feel your feet. Center your body. We're going to play with some of these kind of muscle chains and loops today and how they integrate and where the cross section of your belly works and holds stability while your arms and legs get to move, and how if there's a little bit of something out, maybe a hip that's forward to back, some kind of hip disparity, that can shift by using some rotational forces in the pelvis and the leg bones and also in the shoulders. So that's kind of where we're headed today. But take a moment, hands in prayer or on your body, and just find your breath. Take a minute to show up right here in this moment. Take this time to work on your physical body and know that that vibration changes your energetic body and your wisdom body and goes outward from there. Taking the time to show up into the awareness of what may be not functioning as well as we need to, so that we can make the shifts to make it feel better in our body. The same is true for the society. Today we can say, taking the time to have that awareness to make the shifts that we need to so that more people can feel joy, happiness, acceptance. We can start right here. So feet on the floor, feet pointed straight ahead, arms down to the side. Take it into a shoulder roll up and forward and around. And backwards, up and back and around. And forward again. And because we're going to play with this rotation, I'm going to start right at your arm bones. So just bring your arms out to the side. Strong arms, you can even fold your fingers to your palms a little bit into that golfer grip to keep it stable. And then just rotate your arm bone in the shoulder socket. And see if you can hold your shoulder blades pretty still as you do that to start, so that you're just getting upper arm bone rotation happening. Now let's change that movement, bringing your arms up here, and do the same thing, rotating. Now that had to shift the shoulder blades. The shoulder blades need to slide up, rotate outward, change that rotation. And maybe we get to change what's happening right from the arm bone into the shoulder blade. Bring it back down one more time, rotate, strong elbows. Maybe there's some clicks and pops in there. Find the muscles that rotate that arm internal and external. Medial rotation, external rotation. And then up again. Big lift, get more buoyant in your rib cage, and out and in. And release. Nice. Now, feet still on the floor. Take it right into your arm circle. Fold your finger to your palms, arms down by your sides, float them up. Strong elbows, ribs right over your pelvis, so that there's this balance between how much your bum sticks out and how much you're tucking your tailbone or moving your sit bones down to bring your body into a really neutral place. Sometimes as we go up, the back wants to arch, and I want you to move your pelvis down a little bit so that you stay in that neutral position and that your core muscles are working really well. 40 circles forward. Be able to breathe. Big full breaths. And 40, turn them up, 40 circles backwards, same thing. Think of the kind of lattice of your trunk, those obliques and the transverse abdominis and the rectus abdominis. That one pulls you down. That's not the one we really want to use right now. We want to keep that length in there, but have some stability and still be able to take a full breath. And release. Okay, so now I'm going to hope that that helped to arrange your upper body a little bit more. Now we're going to go into your pelvis. So I want you to take a mini squat. Knees kind of right over your the arch of your foot, and then hips moving back so that you feel like your glutes can activate well. Now, I'm going to just move this down so you can see my feet a little better. So in this squat position, I want you to imagine that from your big toe out to your outer heel, there's this twisting happening, this internal rotation of the leg bone, almost like you're trying to push your leg out like this, but you're not going to let it move. So that's all happening. That the feet rooting to the floor drives that rotation up into your pelvis. So this is stable, knees pointed forward. From the big toe to the outer heel, there's that big internal rotation. And if you're doing that well, you should feel like that makes your sit bones get wider apart. And that you can move that, again, imagining that you're taking the foot out like this, but that's not moving. That may arch your back a little more, but it mostly happens at the upper inner thighs to the sit bones. They go wide. And that you stay long through your torso. Okay, now counter that a little bit by seeing if you can squeeze your butt muscles and let your, like, just clench your butt cheeks a lot. And that would be the opposite direction. So that's almost like taking the foot out like this at the same time. And that should bring you back to that neutral. So sit bones get wide, then sit bones squeeze and kind of narrow. Go back and forth between that a little bit, and you may have a little micro movement in your pelvis. It's probably not even as big as that, as you go sit bones wide, butt squeeze, sit bones more narrow. And just find the muscles really deep in your pelvis that have this little micro movement from the leg bone into the hip sockets and into the pelvis. Good. And then go ahead and stand up. Now we're going to go the other way. Go ahead and take your feet wide and then just clench your butt, squeeze it. So not really altering the position of your pelvis that much. Stay pretty neutral. There may be a slight downward motion, but I don't want you to go like really tucked and flat here. So neutral pelvis, feet pointed out. We're just making it easy for the glutes to squeeze. So that's more emphasis on the sit bones kind of down. Squeeze that in, glutes clenching. And you may feel like that pulls the leg bone more out, pulls the knee more out. Do about 20 of those. So if you have a leg bone that goes into the hip socket and it's crooked, that can make the whole pelvis shift out of position, and it can make where the sacrum and the back come together, it can also make it twist or rotate. So being able to find the rotational muscles in our leg bones, when things rotate well, the pelvis aligns better and we have less rotation through the spine. So that's really what we're after today. So go ahead and take your leg back behind you. I want you to find these glutes again. Strong and stable, even if you bend your front knee to get stable and have a really stable base. You could even hold on to a chair or a wall. And I want you to just do 10 leg lifts backwards behind you. I want you to find your hip extensors. So hamstrings and glute, lifting the leg behind you and then down. Lift and lower. And as you do that, keep this still. It's going to want to pull that little bit of arch. I want the other side standing butt muscle to be working so that as you lift the leg behind you, you're not getting this huge arch happening in your back. So use that sit bone down on that side to help hold the position of your pelvis more stable. More than just your abdominals, even though there are some abdominals pulling in and flattening here to help support that position, this big muscle is more effective at that position. Go ahead and switch sides. Standing balance, I'll do it this way again. If you want, hold on to something and then find what you have to do to find that neutral position here. Bend your knee a little bit, get stable, thigh, hamstring, glute, all working, and then 10 leg lifts. And you should feel the glute work And you should feel this glute pulling down just a little bit to help that stabilize. Nice. Go back to your squat. Back to this neutral position, feet pointed straight ahead, and sit bones go way back again. And then glute squeeze, just micro movements in that inner thighs back and apart, sit bones squeeze, glutes clench. Find them. Can you find those muscles on both sides? Or does one side work more effectively than the other? And it doesn't even have to be a big movement in your pelvis here. Just work. Awesome. Go ahead and come up to standing. And then standing, I want you to find these same muscles. See if I can get a touch higher. Find your balance. Flex this leg. So this hip holding you in good position, flexing this leg, and then bringing it back behind you. Extend, and see if you can use enough of this glute compartment and your belly holding you a little bit tight that this standing leg doesn't move. Up and back and up and back. And switch. Find that standing leg. Find the stability. So know if you have one that's a lot of hip flexion for me. So I have to really find these muscles on this side. That's the side that doesn't like to work for me so much. And do the same thing. Forward and back. Forward and back. Hip flexion, hip extension. In standing, finding that balance. Awesome. And now come down into kneeling. Actually, let's go hands and knees. Grab your block. I want you to take your block and put it between your upper inner thighs. And I want you just to see if you can rotate your upper inner thighs back so that you become like a human Pez dispenser, and you're trying to move that block backwards and then move the inner thighs forward. So these micro rotational movements so that like pushes back towards your belly a little bit. So rolling the thigh bones back, sit bones go wide, then glutes squeeze back to more neutral, then upper inner thighs back. Finding those rotational components in the thigh bones that work the muscles up into the pelvis. Because the knees are stable on the floor, not a lot of movement happens there. Nice. Tuck your toes, press up and back into a downward facing dog pose. Same thing, upper inner thighs go back, sit bones go super wide, and then squeeze your butt muscles. Find neutral. Go back and forth between that a couple of times. Upper inner thighs go back, push that block wide. Inner spiral, big inner spiral from the big toe through the inner heel, all the way up the leg, inner thighs, and then glutes, sit bones get narrow. That block should move in just a little bit. Finding the balance between those actions. Good, and then come down, take the block away, move that in a bigger way, cats and dogs. Sit bones go super wide, big hip flexion, and then tailbone tucks, sit bones go really narrow. And moving all the way up between the shoulders, moving with your breath. And then roll onto your back. Put the bottoms of your feet together. Let your knees drop out to the side. So that would be more external rotation from the leg bone, narrowing your sit bones a little bit. Now go ahead and work that by lifting your hips off the floor, stable in your lumbar. There might be a little bit of action that has to happen, but you're gonna go just glute squeeze. Just get a really good contraction happening there. Down and lift. About 5 more. We're going to drive that rotation again from the leg bones. Bring them up. This time, take them both to the right. And as the leg bones move from the all the way big toe, inner heel, through the knee, feel the leg rotate internal on one side and external on the other. So we're doing a little bit of both here. The left sit bones going up and wide, the right sit bones coming more narrow as your pelvis rotates a bit. That's going to be driving that movement up into the low back, up into the sacrum, up into the ligaments that hold all of that stable. Then come back to neutral. Think again, inner heel going out, whole leg bone rotating in, other leg bone rotating out, left going out, right going in, letting that rotation happen, driving that from the feet all the way up into the pelvis and even a little bit into your trunk now, and back to neutral. Go slowly between that and do a few more. Knee drops, really consciously thinking of how the leg bones are moving into the hip sockets and how that's moving into the pelvis and into the low back. Big toe, inner heel, knee coming down, even into the muscles that pull this hip bone in, let that rotation happen. And then come up. Other side. This is one some orthopedics say, if you're someone that wakes up with a stiff back, just doing this before you get out of bed can loosen up some of the spasm or the ligaments and the muscles of the low back and hips so that you can have a little more freedom in that movement when you get out of bed. Good, now think of this external rotation. Sit bone narrowing, this leg dropping wide, just emphasize the external rotation instead of the internal rotation for a moment. Couple more. Moving slowly. Feeling how all of that has to coordinate. And then back to neutral. Go into pelvic tilts. So now I want you to do this with this, the idea still of all the way at the base of your pelvis. So arch, the muscles in the trunk pull you forward, hip flexion. Some of the muscles here also in your thighs are going to help you, but also your back muscles are pulling you into some extension, and your belly muscles have to lengthen. And then as you tuck your tailbone, squeeze your sit bones, and then flex the back, flatten the back down into the floor, opening up the front of your hips. And then go the other way. Sit bones move wide, hips flex, back arches, extension, and then flatten. About 5 more of those. Slowly, big toes can be down on the ground, calves a little bit active here so that you feel the connection all the way into your feet and into your pelvis, into the low back, integrating all of that movement. Okay, now stretch your right leg straight on the floor. We're going to go into femur rotations. And I want you to still have that emphasis kind of between the inner thighs and the glutes here. So as you go in and the big toe tries to come down to the floor, I want you to feel the heel move out, the toe move down, the upper inner thigh move back, and the sit bone move wide. Make it a huge rotation, but not a lot of movement in your trunk. You may have to have a little movement in your pelvis right now if you're really emphasizing that whole leg. And then move the leg out, try to get the pinky toe down on the ground, squeeze the sit bone more narrow, and move back and forth between that position again. Internal rotation, inner heel, big toe coming down, upper inner thigh moving down toward the floor, sit bone going super wide, and then coming the other way, sit bone getting more narrow, leg coming in, external rotation. That's a lot to think about for just one action, but you can do it. And right now we have an open kinetic chain because the foot is free, but we're still moving up at the hip. Go ahead and switch sides, same thing. As the big toe moves down to the floor, the heel moves wider, the upper inner thigh moves wider, and the sit bone widens away from the tailbone. Then rotate the leg out, pinky toe goes down, inner thigh lifts to the sky, sit bone narrows toward your tailbone. In, big toe down, inner thigh moves down and wide, and out, pinky toe down, sit bone gets more narrow. Keep going. Couple more of those. Good. Now hold all of this in neutral. Put your block between your knees. This time I just want you to keep a slight space in your low back, tuck your shoulders underneath you, and just squeeze straight in. So less about rotation around the sit bones and pelvis, but more just like hug to the midline, find your adductors. They have a rotational component. They also have just a hugging in component. Right now, I want you just to find the hugging in component. We've done a lot of that rotation. So just squeeze and release. Keep going. Let's do about 20 of these. Hug in, feel both the muscles on the inner thighs activate. Sometimes one takes longer, especially if there's been some rotation in the leg bone. It will take longer for one adductor to feel like it's working. Squeeze as long, hold it as long as you need to get that to do it. The muscles on the inside of the leg help rotate. They also are connected into the fascia of your low back. So they are directly tied into what's going on, into some of what's happening in your lumbar spine, both the stability and the movement of that area in your back. And if there's rotational stuff going on in your leg bones, it could affect what's going on in your SI joint or anywhere that might want to twist or move you a little bit. Few more of these. Okay, now hold that squeeze in so the leg bones are just finding really good stability, and then go ahead and do pelvic tilts once more. Arch the back, flatten the back. Even at your heels, that emphasis of that little bit of rotation again, like you're trying to push your feet wide apart, even though they're not moving. Sit bones go wide, and then coming in, sit bones can narrow, back and forth between those two positions to help you land back in neutral. And then go ahead and take that away. Roll up onto your hands and knees. And take your right leg and bring it forward into a lunge. Okay, now the stability of this back leg needs to have some of that balance. And this front leg can just knee over the heel or knee over the arch of your foot, whatever feels good to you today for that position. And then go ahead and like lean way forward, stick your butt way out for a minute, and then squeeze your sit bone toward your tailbone and feel how that can bring you back to vertical. Do that again. Lean forward. So that would be big hip flexion, and then move toward neutral, not just by pulling up your belly, but by moving the sit bone down. And you may feel a pull on the front of that thigh. Do it one more time. Forward, and then find the muscles in here and squeeze down and let that pull you to vertical. Awesome, let's do a twist. Hold that position there, and then open over the right leg, twist, breathe, back to neutral. Good. Now check out this front leg for a moment. You could also be collapsing here if you're not working on this one really well, or the other one to pull you into that neutral position. So be mindful of the position all around your pelvis as you root down, rise up, and twist. Neutral. And again, open it up. Big full breath, fully in, fully out. And back to the center, switch legs. Okay, so focus on the back leg for a moment. Lean forward into that space, and then use the sit bone squeezing toward the tailbone to pull you back to vertical. Lean forward again, hip flexion, moving back to neutral, coming back up, sit bones squeezing down. And you may feel pull in the front of that thigh. If you have tight thigh muscles, we are lengthening the muscles that cross the knee and the hip right now, letting them shorten a little bit, hip flexed, and then coming up. Now you could be in a decent position on this back leg and still be kind of out of position here on the front leg. So both sides, you have to find the balance right now of sit bones down a little bit. Good, that should pull you to neutral, and then go ahead and go into your twist. Now press your foot down into the floor and use that pressure from the floor to help make this butt muscle work more as you twist. Back to neutral, then twist, big deep breath, fully in, fully out. Back to neutral, one more, big twist. In and out, and cats and dogs one more time. With all of that great awareness to what might have been not working as well as you wanted it to before. Maybe you had one sit bone that wasn't even talking to your tailbone. And as you moved, it was all movement in your belly and your back, which is less effective than being able to move these big muscles in your pelvis. And then come down onto your back. Grab your block. Place your block between your knees. Squeeze in on the block, bring your arms out to the sides. And then just rotate your arm bone. So as your arms went out to your side, the shoulder blades needed to come out toward your armpits a little bit. Collarbones wide still. And then rotate your palms down to the floor and then back up and even beyond that so that you're lifting your pinkies to the ceiling. So that the rotation happens in the arm bone all the way down, all the way up. And the shoulder blades may need to react to that a little bit. Squeezing in on the block at your knees just to hold all of what we just did really stable. A bit of a balance between the inner thighs going wide and the sit bone squeezing. You're just holding that neutral place right now. Your back should have a slight curve off the floor. Nice. And then roll onto your belly. Go ahead and take your block away. This time, take your arms straight out from your shoulders on the floor. Pigeon toe your feet. You can let the inner thighs lift and then sit bones narrow a little bit so that you have both that internal rotation at the leg bone and sit bones narrow to pull you right to neutral. And then arms out to the side, rotate your arms in this position here. Down and up. Let's do 10 of those. And then move up into that Y shape. And do the same thing, forehead resting on the floor. Find the balance in your legs. And then rotate your arm bones. all the way up at the shoulder. When you've done 10 there, move it to straight up over your head and do the same thing. Out and under. And then come all the way up to seated. Sitting floor twist. Bringing one leg up. See if I can cue this. Bring your left leg up. Bring your left hand behind you. And right hand across. Sit tall and twist. So even here in your pelvis, there has to be that balance between inner thighs going together and wide, sit bones going wide so that you have that base, and then a little bit of clench your glutes to hold you so that you can root and lift up out of that in your spine and get more of a twist. Knowing that one leg bone is doing something a little different than the other, it might be different on one side. Back to neutral, and then switch. Right leg crossing over, right hand behind you, left crossing over the top. A little awareness all the way at the base of your sit bones, inner thighs pushing down and wide, sit bones get wide, then glutes squeeze, root to rise, and then twist. Untwist. Come down onto your, or actually staying seated right here, legs out straight. Go ahead and rotate your feet in, internal rotation. Actually physically help your sit bones move wider. Inner thighs move down, sit bones go wide. And then bring your feet back to neutral or even out and press your glutes down like you're trying to lift yourself off the floor that way, and just find that balance. Good. One more time, toes in, sit bones get wider at your base, and see if you can feel them evenly, and then come back to neutral and just clench your butt cheeks. And that should help you lift out of that. Good. From there, elbow curls. Hold that position, thighs tight all the way around your kneecaps. Keep your heels on the ground though. Don't let them go into too much hyperextension right now. All the way together, all the way back. And release. Interlace your fingers, flip your hands over, take them all the way up, all the way at your pelvis, inner thighs go down to the floor, sit bones go wide, then glutes squeeze, bring you back to neutral, then root from there, rise up out of that. Lift. Now look up. Open your neck, open that space. Take a full breath, fully in, fully out. Shoulder blades lifting up toward your ears and then sinking away from your ears just a little bit. Find that balance. One more breath. And release. Nice work. Find whatever is the best position for you to rest. Legs in up over the block in static back or into your Shavasana. Legs out straight on the floor. You decide. I read a quote that said, the world doesn't need a lot of more people who can bend themselves into crazy positions. What the world needs is more people who have learned enough about themselves that they can be kind and empathetic and help spread joy in this world. That was paraphrasing, not exactly quoted. But I liked it. So knowing that showing up to our mat, to our practice, in the practice of yoga or in learning about our body and posture therapy, that we are taking out the leaks of energy and we are aligning our body in a way where energy can flow. We're also shining light into places that we may not have known were not working correctly. So as you move into your meditation today, you can move in with that beautiful thought, really, of allowing us to know ourselves better, both our physical body and our mind, so that we can show up as a witness. And sometimes that means to be in non-reaction, and sometimes it means to be in the learning. But all of it is so that we can do better, be better. So find your breath. Allow the breath to move in and out of your body. If you notice that you're being taken by a thought, see if you can bring your body, bring your awareness just back to the breath. Observe whatever's there without changing it. Today we worked on the micro movements of rotation and the balance between taking the sit bones wide and using the glutes to root and make the sit bones more narrow. Those micro movements of the rotation of the leg bone and how it ties into your pelvis, into your SI joint, and into your spine is a really important foundational thing to be able to grasp. Sometimes we're missing completely one side of the ability to do that, or because of tightness or because of just lack of awareness. So as you feel that in your body today, you can become aware each time you sit down or when you're standing, what is happening from the leg bone all the way up into the pelvis. Moving all of that is a lot of movement, especially if it's not all happening really correctly and on the first time, or as much movement as we did there today. You may feel a little unstable. So something like an air bench could help stabilize that if you need it, or even just lying here in static back to allow that to kind of settle would be fine. Hopefully that feels like you have more freedom and better movement, and that frees up something that might be stuck. But I never know. Thank you, as always, for showing up to class, for your continued support. And I'll bring you back around, or you may turn off your computer and stay there. Oh, you have to unmute yourself now. I have lost the power to do that.
Thank you, Kyra.
Thank you, Kyra.
Yeah. How was that? Did people get it?
Yeah, I got it. I loved it.
That was so cool.
Great. That's good.
Cool.
I did. It was hard to do though, but
Yeah.
once you
really.
did it, you could really feel it.
Yeah, that was so great when we opened our knees and we're lying down and we're sawing back and forth. It was like, whoa.
Yes, that one was really cool.
Don't know where you found it, but it was great.
Knee drops. Awesome.
Yeah, the back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not regular knee drops, though. It was new knee drops.
New knee.
Yeah.
Bigger
New way
awareness.
to think about it.
Better knee drops.
Yeah,
Cool.
Thank
that
you.
was
Thanks.
awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Have a
Thanks,
great day.
Kyra.
Okay.
Have a good
Bye.
day.
Thank you, Kyra.
Bye.
Bye.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.